I stood on my son's doorstep in my ash-stained nightgown, having lost everything I owned in the fire just hours before expecting comfort from my only child. Instead, Tyler screamed at me, "Get out, Crystal doesn't want you here and I can't deal with your drama right now." As I stumbled back to my car in shock, shaking hands, dialing a number I hadn't called in 45 years, I never imagined that Vincent Romano, my high school sweetheart who became a millionaire, would answer on the first ring and change everything. My name is Sarah Matthews, and at 65 years old, I thought I knew what heartbreak felt like when my husband died 3 years ago. But nothing prepared me for watching my entire life disappear in flames at 2 o'clock on a Tuesday morning. I had been a high school art teacher for 37 years before retiring, living quietly in the cozy ranch house that Robert and I built together in 1988. What started as a modest neighborhood had transformed into one of the most desirable areas in our city, with young professionals paying $800,000 for homes that once sold for $60,000. The fire began somewhere in the electrical system, according to the initial report from Battalion Chief Rodriguez. I woke to the acrid smell of smoke and the terrifying crackle of flames consuming my kitchen wall. Everything happened so fast that I barely managed to grab my purse and car keys before escaping through the front door in my cotton nightgown and slippers. I stood on the sidewalk watching firefighters battle the inferno that was devouring 35 years of memories, photographs, artwork, and everything else that defined my existence. My son Tyler was 32 years old, working as a sales manager at an automotive dealership and living with his girlfriend Crystal in a downtown apartment complex. We'd been close when he was younger, sharing weekend camping trips and long conversations about his dreams of starting his own business someday. But everything changed when Crystal entered his life 18 months ago. She was 26, stunningly beautiful, with platinum blonde hair and designer clothes, working as a real estate agent with ambitious plans for her career. Crystal had an unsettling habit of commenting on my living situation whenever she visited, making remarks about how I was wasting the potential of such valuable property by living there alone. She would walk through my house with appraising eyes suggesting improvements that would maximize resale value and questioning whether I really needed so much space for one person. Her observations always felt calculating rather than helpful, as if she were conducting a professional evaluation rather than making casual conversation. The morning after the fire, I drove to Tyler's apartment complex, still wearing the same smoky nightgown, having spent the night in a hotel room paid for by the Red Cross volunteer, who found me sitting on the curb. My hair was singed, my hands were scraped from climbing through the window, and I felt more vulnerable than I had ever experienced in my entire life. I climbed the 3 flights of stairs to his unit, expecting the warmth and comfort that any mother should receive from her child during such a devastating crisis. Tyler answered the door wearing basketball shorts and a wrinkled t-shirt, his brown hair disheveled from sleep. When he saw me standing there, his expression shifted from confusion to something that looked disturbingly like annoyance rather than concern for my well-being. He glanced nervously over his shoulder before stepping into the hallway and partially closing the door behind him. "Mom, I can't deal with this right now," he said, his voice carrying a coldness I had never heard from him before. "Crystal's been really stressed about her career lately, and she doesn't want any drama or extra people around the apartment. You need to figure something else out because this isn't a good time for us." Before I could respond, Crystal appeared behind Tyler, perfectly made up despite the early hour, wearing a silk robe that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her smile was sharp and calculating as she placed a possessive hand on Tyler's shoulder. "I'm so sorry about your house, Sarah," she said with false sympathy that made my skin crawl. "But maybe this is actually a blessing in disguise. You've been talking about downsizing for years, and now you can move into one of those nice senior communities where you'll have people your own age to socialize with and activities to keep you busy." The cruelty of being turned away by my own son after losing everything was devastating beyond description. I stood there speechless, watching Tyler nod along with Crystal's suggestion, as if abandoning his homeless mother was perfectly reasonable behavior. The man who used to call me every Sunday and bring me flowers on Mother's Day was looking at me like I was an inconvenient stranger asking for charity. I walked back to my car on unsteady legs, sitting in the driver's seat, while tears streamed down my face and my hands trembled uncontrollably. That's when I remembered Vincent Romano, the boy who had loved me with the pure intensity that only exists in teenage hearts before life, and practical decisions pulled us in different directions. We had reconnected through Facebook after Robert's death, exchanging occasional messages about our grandchildren and career achievements. Vincent had become everything we dreamed about during those long talks under the stars behind the school gymnasium. He built a commercial real estate empire worth over $50 million, developing shopping centers and office complexes across the Southeast. His recent divorce from his second wife had made headline news in the business section, not because of scandal, but because of the massive charitable foundation they established during the settlement process. With shaking fingers, I dialed his number, not knowing what I would say or why I thought calling him after 45 years was appropriate behavior for a woman in crisis. The phone rang twice before his familiar voice answered, deeper now, but still carrying the warmth that had made my 17-year-old heart race. "Sarah, is everything okay?" He asked immediately, somehow sensing from my tone that this wasn't a casual social call. When I explained about the fire, Tyler's rejection, and my current situation sitting in a hotel parking lot with nowhere to go, Vincent's response was swift and decisive. "I'm coming to get you right now. Don't move from where you are and don't worry about anything else. We'll figure this out together." While I waited for Vincent to arrive, I called the fire department for an update on their investigation. Captain Williams informed me that they had found evidence of accelerant in multiple locations throughout my house, making this officially an arson case, rather than an accidental electrical fire. Someone had deliberately destroyed my home, and the realization sent ice through my veins as I began wondering who would want to hurt me. The more I thought about Crystal's reaction to my appearance at Tyler's door, the more suspicious it seemed. She hadn't expressed any shock about the fire, hadn't asked if I was injured, and hadn't shown any of the natural concern that most people display when hearing about such a traumatic event. Her immediate suggestion about senior living and her obvious eagerness to get rid of me felt calculated rather than spontaneous. I remembered that Tyler had given Crystal keys to my house several months ago, ostensibly, so she could check on the property when I traveled to visit my sister in Florida. Crystal had used those keys to walk through my home multiple times, always claiming she was making sure everything was secure, but spending an unusual amount of time taking photographs of rooms and fixtures with her phone. Vincent arrived in a gleaming black Mercedes sedan, stepping out wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension check. At 68, he had aged into distinguished elegance, with silver hair perfectly styled and intelligent blue eyes that still held the kindness I remembered from our youth. When he saw me sitting in my car wearing singed pajamas and looking like a refugee from disaster, his expression shifted to controlled fury that someone had reduced me to such circumstances. "Sarah, my God," he said, opening my car door and helping me stand with gentle hands. "What kind of man turns his back on his mother when she's lost everything? This is not how I raised my children, and it's certainly not how you raised Tyler." Vincent drove me directly to his estate in the exclusive Riverside Hills neighborhood, where his sprawling colonial mansion sat on 5 acres of manicured grounds. He settled me in the guest house, a charming cottage that was larger and more luxurious than most people's primary residences, complete with a full kitchen living area and bedroom suite decorated in tasteful antiques. "You're staying here as long as you need," Vincent declared, refusing to hear any arguments about imposing on his hospitality. "I'm calling my lawyer and my private investigator because something about this fire doesn't smell right, and I want answers before whoever did this has time to cover their tracks." Detective Luis Mendoza arrived that afternoon, a sharp-eyed former police officer who now handled sensitive investigations for Vincent's business empire. Luis was 45 years old, compact and intense, with the methodical approach of someone who had solved complex cases through careful attention to details that others overlooked. He listened to my story with professional interest, taking notes about Crystal's behavior and her unusual familiarity with my property. Arson cases involving family members usually have financial motives, Luis explained as we sat in Vincent's study surrounded by law books and business awards. I'm going to dig into Crystal's background and look at anyone who might benefit from your property becoming available for sale. While Luis began his investigation, I tried to process the emotional devastation of Tyler's rejection alongside the practical reality of starting over at 65, with nothing but the clothes Vincent had bought for me. The guest house was beautiful, but it felt like living in someone else's dream, while my own life had been reduced to ashes and heartbreak. Vincent treated me with the consideration and respect that Tyler had denied bringing me meals when I was too depressed to cook, listening, when I needed to talk about my grief, and providing the emotional support that should have come from my own family. His kindness made Tyler's cruelty even more painful by contrast, highlighting how thoroughly my son had abandoned his responsibilities as my child. Luis returned the next morning with disturbing preliminary findings about Crystal's activities leading up to the fire. Bank records showed that she had been researching my property extensively through her real estate connections, including hiring a professional appraiser to evaluate my land without my knowledge or consent. The appraisal report valued my lot at $850,000, significantly higher than I had realized. She's been busy, Luis reported grimly. Crystal opened several bank accounts in Tyler's name over the past 6 months, and I found forged documents that appear to be signed by you transferring power of attorney to Tyler in case of medical emergency or mental incapacity. She's been setting up the legal framework to take control of your assets. The discovery of forged paperwork made my blood run cold as I realized how extensively Crystal had been planning to steal my property. Luis showed me copies of documents bearing my supposedly signature, including a will that left everything to Tyler and a medical directive that gave him authority to make decisions about my care if I became incapacitated. Vincent's lawyer, Margaret Chen, examined the forged documents with the expertise of someone who had spent 20 years handling complex estate cases. Margaret was a petite woman in her 50s, with steel gray hair and the sharp intelligence that had made her one of the most respected attorneys in the state. Her analysis of the paperwork revealed sophisticated legal knowledge that suggested Crystal had professional help with the forgeries. These documents are extremely well crafted, Margaret explained during our meeting in her downtown office. The legal language is precise, and the formatting matches standard estate planning templates. Crystal either has extensive legal training herself or she's working with someone who does. Security footage from nearby businesses provided the evidence that confirmed my worst suspicions about Crystal's involvement in the arson. Camera recordings from the convenience store across from my neighborhood showed Crystal's white BMW parked on my street at 11:30 the night before the fire, despite her supposed alibi claiming she was visiting friends in the next county. Luis discovered that Crystal had been in contact with several demolition companies and land developers over the previous 3 months, inquiring about the cost of clearing residential lots and the timeline for new construction projects. Her browser history revealed extensive research into insurance claim procedures and the legal requirements for inheriting property from deceased relatives. She's been planning this for months, Luis concluded after reviewing all the evidence. Crystal researched your insurance policies, studied the neighborhood development patterns, and identified your property as a prime target for quick profit through inheritance fraud. The investigation revealed that Crystal had been systematically alienating Tyler from family and friends who might question her influence over his decisions. Phone records showed that she monitored his communications and discouraged him from maintaining relationships with people who knew me well. She had convinced Tyler that I was becoming confused and forgetful, setting up the narrative that I might need someone to manage my affairs. Margaret's legal analysis showed that Crystal's forged documents would have given Tyler complete control over my estate if I had died in the fire, allowing him to sell the property immediately without probate delays or family disputes. The timing was calculated to maximize profit while minimizing legal scrutiny, taking advantage of Tyler's emotional vulnerability after my supposed death. The most chilling discovery came when Luis found evidence that Crystal had researched my medical history and insurance coverage, including the size of my life insurance policy and the procedures for claiming benefits after accidental death. She had gathered detailed information about my daily routines, sleeping patterns, and the layout of my house, knowledge that would have been essential for planning a successful arson attack. Vincent's connections in the business community provided additional context about Crystal's real estate activities and her reputation among other agents. Several colleagues described her as ruthlessly ambitious, willing to use any tactics necessary to close deals and advance her career. Her commission earnings had doubled over the past year, primarily through sales of properties owned by elderly clients who decided to downsize after experiencing family pressure to sell. Luis's deeper investigation into Crystal's background revealed a sophisticated real estate fraud operation that extended far beyond my individual case. Crystal's real name was Christine Valdez, and she had arrest records in Nevada and Arizona for elder fraud, identity theft, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. She'd been using multiple aliases and fake credentials to target elderly property owners in rapidly gentrifying neighborhoods where land values were increasing dramatically. "Your son's girlfriend is actually part of a criminal enterprise," Luis explained during our morning briefing in Vincent's study. "She works with corrupt city officials to identify neighborhoods slated for commercial redevelopment, then targets elderly homeowners whose properties will become extremely valuable once rezoning is approved." The revelation that Crystal was a career criminal with multiple victims made Tyler's betrayal even more painful as it became clear that my son had been completely manipulated by someone who specialized in exploiting family relationships for financial gain. Louise showed me photographs from her previous cases, elderly men and women who had lost their homes, life savings, and family relationships to Crystal's carefully orchestrated schemes. Detective work revealed that Crystal was working directly with Robert Hayes, a corrupt city planning official who'd been taking bribes to fast-track rezoning applications for commercial development. Hayes was 53 years old, a career bureaucrat with gambling debts and expensive tastes that far exceeded his government salary. He had been providing Crystal with insider information about upcoming development projects in exchange for cash payments and promises of future real estate commissions. The conspiracy was breathtaking in its scope and cynical calculation. My neighborhood was slated for commercial rezoning that would allow construction of a major shopping complex, transforming residential lots worth $800,000 into commercial properties worth $3 million each. Crystal had obtained this confidential information from Hayes months before it would become public knowledge. Vincent used his political connections and business relationships to investigate Hayes' activities within the city planning department. Phone records and financial transactions revealed that Hayes had been manipulating zoning applications and environmental impact studies to benefit specific developers who were willing to pay for preferential treatment. "This goes way beyond insurance fraud," Vincent reported after meeting with the FBI agents who were now investigating the broader corruption scandal. Crystal and Hayes have been systematically targeting elderly homeowners throughout the historic district using arson, intimidation, and legal manipulation to force property sales before the rezoning announcements drive up prices. Luis discovered that Crystal had been drugging Tyler with anxiety medications that she added to his coffee and evening drinks, making him more paranoid and susceptible to her manipulative suggestions. Blood tests ordered by Vincent's physician confirmed the presence of benzodiazepines in Tyler's system drugs that would have impaired his judgment and made him more dependent on Crystal's guidance. The medication explained Tyler's dramatic personality changes over the past year, including his increased anxiety about financial security and his growing hostility toward family members who questioned Crystal's influence. She had been systematically poisoning my son, while convincing him that I was the threat to his stability and future prosperity. Crystal had shown Tyler fake real estate listings and staged phone calls designed to make him believe that I was secretly planning to sell my house and move to Florida without discussing my plans with him. She convinced him that his inheritance was in jeopardy and that he needed to take immediate legal action to protect his financial future. Bank records revealed that Crystal had been systematically stealing money from Tyler's accounts to fund her expensive lifestyle and pay bribes to Hayes and other accomplices. She had convinced Tyler that his missing money was being spent on investment opportunities and business development that would eventually make them wealthy enough to buy their own home in an exclusive neighborhood. Vincent's investigator uncovered evidence that Crystal had taken out life insurance policies on both Tyler and me without our knowledge, using forged documents and stolen personal information to complete the applications. The policies would have paid $2 million if Tyler died under suspicious circumstances and $3 million if I died in an apparent accident. The insurance policies revealed Crystal's ultimate plan. She intended to kill both Tyler and me when she gained control of the property through inheritance fraud. Tyler would have been eliminated after signing over the land rights to her, making her the sole beneficiary of both the property value and the life insurance payouts. Hayes had been fast-tracking demolition permits for properties damaged by the suspicious fires throughout my neighborhood, allowing Crystal's developer partners to purchase and clear the land before insurance investigations could uncover evidence of arson. 3 other elderly homeowners had died in similar fires over the past 18 months, all of them living alone on valuable lots slated for commercial redevelopment. The pattern of targeting isolated elderly residents was deliberate and calculated, designed to minimize family interference and community resistance to the rapid property transfers. Crystal had researched each victim's family relationships and financial situations, selecting people who were most vulnerable to manipulation and least likely to have advocates who would question suspicious circumstances. Luis's investigation revealed that Crystal had been using Tyler as cover while gathering intelligence on neighborhood families, their daily routines, security systems, and insurance coverage. She had convinced him that she was simply being friendly and community-minded when actually she was conducting surveillance for criminal purposes. The discovery that Tyler had been an unwitting accomplice in a criminal conspiracy targeting his own mother was devastating for both of us. My son had been poisoned, manipulated, and used as a weapon against me by someone who was planning to kill him once he was no longer useful to her schemes. Vincent and I decided that Tyler needed to see the evidence of Crystal's deception before she could further manipulate him or eliminate him as a witness to her crimes. We arranged to meet Tyler at a neutral location away from Crystal's influence, where Luis could present the documented proof of her criminal activities without interruption or interference. Tyler initially refused to believe that Crystal could be involved in arson or fraud, defending her with the desperate intensity of someone whose entire worldview was being challenged. He accused me of being jealous of his relationship and suggested that my grief over losing the house was making me paranoid and suspicious of innocent behavior. Crystal loves me, and she's been trying to help our family plan for the future, Tyler insisted, his voice shaking with emotion. She's been worried about you living alone in that big house, and she thinks you need more support and security as you get older. Everything she's done has been out of concern for your well-being. Luis played recordings of Crystal's phone conversations with Hayes, captured through FBI wiretaps that revealed her true feelings about Tyler and her plans for our family. Hearing Crystal's voice laughing about the stupid kid who believes everything I tell him, and discussing strategies for getting rid of the old lady permanently, shattered Tyler's illusions about their relationship. She's been drugging you, Vincent explained gently, showing Tyler the medical test results that proved the presence of anxiety medications in his bloodstream. Crystal has been controlling your thoughts and emotions through chemical manipulation, making you paranoid about your mother while she planned to steal everything your family worked to build. Tyler's world collapsed as he absorbed the evidence of Crystal's systematic deception and the realization that he had been used as a weapon against his own mother. The blood test results explaining his anxiety, memory problems, and personality changes over the past year provided scientific proof that his betrayal of me had been chemically induced rather than reflecting his true feelings. Flashback revelations emerged as Tyler's mind cleared from the effects of the drugging, allowing him to remember incidents that Crystal had manipulated or erased from his consciousness. He recalled finding strange pills in his coffee cup, Crystal's insistence on preparing all his meals and drinks, and her angry reactions when he tried to maintain relationships with friends who questioned her motives. "I remember now," Tyler said, tears streaming down his face as suppressed memories returned. "She convinced me you were planning to sell the house without telling me that you were hiding money from the family, that you thought I was irresponsible and didn't deserve to inherit anything. She showed me fake documents and played recordings of phone calls that must have been staged." Louise presented evidence that Crystal had been filming Tyler's emotional breakdowns and anxiety attacks, creating a video record that she could use to have him declared mentally incompetent if he ever tried to resist her control or expose her criminal activities. The footage showed Tyler at his most vulnerable moments, confused and frightened by the medication effects that Crystal was deliberately inflicting. The psychological manipulation was revealed to be extremely sophisticated, involving research into Tyler's childhood insecurities and his complicated relationship with authority figures. Crystal had exploited his fear of disappointing me and his anxiety about financial security, turning his love for family into a weapon that she used to destroy those relationships. Tyler broke into Crystal's apartment using his key-finding files containing detailed information about multiple elderly victims, including photographs, financial records, medical histories, and family relationship charts. The files revealed that Crystal had been targeting vulnerable seniors throughout the region, using different romantic partners and accomplices to gain access to their assets. That evening, Tyler followed Crystal to an upscale restaurant downtown where she was meeting Hayes to celebrate what they believed was my successful murder and the clearing of legal obstacles to their property development scheme. Tyler wore recording equipment provided by Vincent's security team, capturing their conversation as they toasted my supposed death and discussed dividing the profits from insurance claims and land sales. "The stupid old woman trusted everyone," Crystal laughed, raising her wine glass in a mock toast to my memory. "She actually believed her precious son cared more about family than money. Tyler was so easy to manipulate once I got him dependent on the medication. He would have signed over everything to me within another month." Hayes discussed their plans to approach Tyler about selling the property quickly before he gets emotional and changes his mind about honoring his mother's wishes. They planned to present him with forged documents claiming that I had wanted the land sold immediately after my death to prevent him from making impulsive decisions based on grief. Tyler recorded Crystal's admission that she had started the fire herself, watching from across the street to make sure that I didn't escape before the flames consumed the house. She described the satisfaction of seeing my bedroom window glowing with fire, believing that she had successfully eliminated the main obstacle to her criminal enterprise. The conversation revealed that Crystal had been planning to kill Tyler too once she gained legal control of the property through the forged inheritance documents. She had researched methods for staging his death to look like suicide, brought on by grief over losing his mother, allowing her to inherit everything through the fake marriage documents she had prepared. "He's becoming too clingy and suspicious," Crystal told Hayes dismissively. "Once I get the death certificate and the property transfer completed, I'll increase his medication dosage until he has a fatal accident. The insurance investigator will see a grieving son who couldn't cope with losing his mother." Sarah and Vincent listened to Tyler's recordings from the restaurant's private dining room, having coordinated with FBI agents to capture every word of Crystal's confession. The surveillance equipment was sophisticated enough to record clear audio despite the background noise of other diners and restaurant music. Tyler's transformation from manipulated victim to determined son seeking justice for his family was remarkable to witness. The young man who had turned me away from his door was now risking his safety to gather evidence against the woman who had destroyed our relationship through chemical manipulation and psychological abuse. The recordings captured Crystal's confession about putting Tyler on anxiety medication without his knowledge, making him paranoid and dependent, while she systematically isolated him from family and friends who might interfere with her criminal plans. Her casual discussion of Tyler's planned murder revealed the depth of her coldness and calculation. The revelation that would shock Crystal and Hayes the most was still to come. I had been working with the FBI for weeks before the fire, and my supposed death was actually part of an elaborate sting operation designed to catch the entire criminal network in the act of celebrating their crimes and planning their next moves. FBI agent Diana Foster had contacted me 3 months earlier after other elderly victims reported suspicious activities involving Crystal and Hayes. The federal investigation had been tracking their real estate fraud ring across multiple states, gathering evidence of systematic elder abuse and corruption that had stolen millions of dollars from vulnerable seniors. We needed someone on the inside who could document their activities and provide evidence of their planning process. Agent Foster explained to Tyler as his mind reeled from this newest revelation. Your mother volunteered to be the bait that would draw them into making incriminating statements and revealing the full scope of their criminal enterprise. The federal investigation had been monitoring Hayes' activities in the city planning department for over a year, documenting bribes, illegal rezoning decisions, and the systematic targeting of elderly homeowners whose properties would become valuable once development plans were implemented. Crystal's fraud ring was part of a larger network that included corrupt officials, unethical developers, and professional criminals. Vincent's role in the investigation went beyond providing safe housing for me during the operation. His wealth and business connections had allowed the FBI to use sophisticated surveillance equipment and establish cover identities that would be convincing to criminals who were used to dealing with wealthy real estate investors. The fire at my house had been real, but I had been safely evacuated hours before the arson occurred. FBI agents had been monitoring Crystal's communications and knew exactly when she planned to strike, allowing them to remove me from danger while maintaining the appearance that I had died in the flames. My decision to participate in the federal sting operation had been motivated by the desire to protect other elderly Americans from becoming victims of Crystal's fraud ring. Agent Foster had shown me files on dozens of previous victims who had lost their homes, life savings, and family relationships to similar schemes targeting vulnerable seniors. Tyler's cooperation with federal agents had been essential to the success of the operation, even though he hadn't known he was gathering evidence for law enforcement. His recordings of Crystal's confessions provided proof of murder conspiracy, drug-induced manipulation, and systematic elder abuse that would ensure lengthy prison sentences for all involved. Crystal's escape plan had been elaborate and well-funded, including fake passports, offshore bank accounts, and airline tickets to countries without extradition treaties with the United States. She had planned to disappear immediately after Tyler's planned suicide, taking the insurance money and property proceeds to start a new life under a different identity. FBI financial analysis revealed that Crystal's fraud ring had stolen over $12 million from elderly victims across 7 states, using a network of corrupt officials, unethical lawyers, and professional arsonists to systematically target vulnerable homeowners in gentrifying neighborhoods. Vincent's property development expertise had been crucial to proving the true value of targeted properties and calculating the total damages inflicted by the criminal enterprise. His analysis showed that victims had been systematically cheated out of millions of dollars through below-market sales forced by arson, intimidation, and legal manipulation. Crystal's desperate attempt to frame Tyler for the arson when she realized the FBI was involved demonstrated her willingness to destroy anyone who threatened her criminal enterprise. She claimed that Tyler was mentally unstable and obsessed with inheriting money, using the videos she had recorded during his drugged episodes as supposed evidence of his dangerous behavior. Hayes' betrayal of Crystal when he realized federal agents were investigating showed the fragile nature of criminal partnerships built on greed rather than loyalty. His attempts to negotiate a plea deal by providing evidence against Crystal and other accomplices revealed additional victims and criminal activities that the FBI had not yet discovered. My moment of triumph came when I emerged alive to confront Crystal at what she believed was my funeral, held at the same funeral home where she had attended memorial services for her previous victims. The shock on her face when she realized that her perfect murder had been an FBI sting operation was deeply satisfying after months of planning and preparation. Tyler's public apology to me in front of the assembled FBI agents, federal prosecutors, and journalists covering the case was both heartbreaking and healing. His recognition that Crystal had used chemical manipulation to turn him against his own mother helped restore our relationship while providing powerful testimony about the sophisticated nature of elder abuse crimes. Vincent's proposal to help rebuild my house as a testament to our renewed relationship and our victory over those who had tried to destroy our family added a romantic conclusion to what had been a terrifying and emotionally devastating experience. His love and support had been essential to my survival and recovery. The federal investigation had uncovered a criminal network that extended far beyond Crystal and Hayes, including corrupt lawyers, unethical doctors who provided false medical evaluations, and professional criminals who specialized in staging accidents and suicides that eliminated witnesses and victims who became suspicious of ongoing fraud schemes. The federal courthouse buzzed with media attention as Crystal Hayes and their 5 accomplices faced Judge Rebecca Morrison for arraignment on charges that included attempted murder, arson, elder abuse, conspiracy racketeering, and systematic fraud. Crystal arrived wearing an orange jail jumpsuit, her perfectly styled hair now disheveled, looking like the desperate criminal she had always been beneath her polished exterior. The courtroom was packed with journalists, federal agents, other victims of the fraud ring, and community members who had followed the case through months of sensational news coverage. Tyler sat beside me in the front row, holding my hand as we prepared to face the woman who had nearly destroyed both our lives through manipulation and attempted murder. Crystal's public defender attempted to portray her as a victim of circumstance, who'd been coerced into criminal activity by Hayes and other male accomplices, but the evidence of her leadership role in the fraud ring was overwhelming. FBI recordings captured her giving orders to other criminals planning attacks on specific victims and celebrating successful thefts with callous indifference to the suffering she had caused. My victim impact statement detailed not only the financial losses from the attempted theft of my property, but the emotional trauma of being betrayed by my own son, while facing the terror of nearly being murdered by someone I had welcomed into our family. Speaking directly to Crystal, I described the devastating impact of her manipulation on Tyler and the destruction of trust that had taken months of therapy to repair. Tyler's testimony about the psychological abuse and chemical manipulation he had endured provided powerful evidence of Crystal's sophisticated criminal methods. His description of the anxiety attacks, memory problems, and personality changes caused by involuntary drugging demonstrated how Crystal had used medical knowledge to control and exploit her victims' family members. Vincent used his financial resources to ensure that Crystal and her accomplices faced the best possible prosecution, hiring expert witnesses and forensic specialists who could explain the complex real estate fraud schemes to the jury. His testimony about my strength and resilience during the investigation helped counter Crystal's attempts to portray me as a confused elderly woman who had misunderstood innocent business activities. Federal prosecutors presented evidence that Crystal's fraud ring had victimized 47 elderly Americans across multiple states, stealing an estimated $14 million through arson, intimidation, forged documents, and systematic manipulation of family relationships. The scope of the criminal enterprise shocked even experienced law enforcement officers who had investigated organized crime for decades. Crystal's desperate attempt to claim pregnancy with Tyler's child collapsed when medical records revealed that she had undergone tubal ligation surgery years earlier and had made false pregnancy claims in previous fraud cases to gain sympathy from judges and juries. Her pattern of deception extended to every aspect of her life, including fabricated medical conditions designed to manipulate legal proceedings. Medical examiner testimony about the sophisticated arson techniques used in my house fire proved that Crystal had professional training or assistance in planning the attack. The deliberate placement of accelerants and the timing of the ignition demonstrated knowledge that could only have been gained through extensive research or criminal experience. FBI forensic accountants traced the flow of stolen money through complex networks of shell companies, offshore bank accounts, and fake investment schemes that Crystal had used to hide proceeds from her crimes. The financial evidence showed systematic theft dating back over 5 years, with victims losing their homes, life savings, and family relationships to carefully orchestrated fraud schemes. Crystal's previous fraud convictions in Nevada, Arizona, and Texas were revealed during sentencing hearings, showing a pattern of targeting elderly victims through romantic relationships with their adult children. Her use of multiple aliases and fake credentials demonstrated sophisticated identity fraud skills that had allowed her to evade prosecution for years. Hayes's confession implicated the mayor and 3 other city officials in the broader corruption scandal that had enabled Crystal's fraud ring to operate with impunity. His detailed testimony about bribery, illegal rezoning decisions, and the manipulation of development permits led to a complete investigation of municipal government that resulted in additional arrests and resignations. Tyler's emotional reunion with me in the courthouse hallway, witnessed by dozens of journalists and court officials, provided a powerful image of family reconciliation and healing after months of manipulation and betrayal. His tears and apologies demonstrated genuine remorse for his behavior under Crystal's influence and his commitment to rebuilding our relationship. The media coverage of Crystal's sentencing hearing brought national attention to the issue of elder fraud and the vulnerability of older Americans to sophisticated criminals who exploit family relationships for financial gain. My case became a symbol of resilience and justice that inspired other victims to come forward with their stories. Crystal received a 30-year federal sentence for her role as leader of the criminal enterprise, with additional state charges for attempted murder and arson that would keep her in prison for the rest of her natural life. Her cold reaction to the sentence, showing no remorse for her victims, reinforced the judge's decision to impose the maximum penalty allowed by law. Hayes was sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for public corruption conspiracy and his role in enabling systematic fraud against elderly citizens. The judge noted that his abuse of public trust had made him particularly culpable for the suffering inflicted on vulnerable community members who deserved protection rather than exploitation. Tyler's vindication came through psychiatric evaluation that proved he had been chemically manipulated and psychologically abused rather than being a willing participant in criminal activities. The medical evidence of involuntary drugging supported his testimony and helped restore his reputation in the community where he continued to live and work. Vincent's testimony praising my courage and intelligence during the federal investigation helped establish my credibility as a witness and victim advocate. His support throughout the legal proceedings demonstrated the power of genuine love and partnership in overcoming criminal attempts to destroy family relationships. My property was restored to me with triple damages from the Federal Victim Restitution Fund, providing financial security that exceeded what I had lost in the fire. The neighborhood rezoning that would have enriched Crystal and her accomplices was reversed, preserving the historic character of our community and protecting other elderly residents from similar exploitation. 1 year after Crystal's sentencing, I stood in the garden of my rebuilt home wearing a white dress and holding Vincent's hand as we exchanged wedding vows, surrounded by friends, neighbors, and law enforcement officers who had become extended family through our shared fight for justice. The house that had risen from the ashes was more beautiful than the original, designed with security features and accessibility improvements that would allow me to age in place with dignity and safety. Vincent and I had discovered that our teenage love had evolved into mature partnership, based on mutual respect, shared values, and the deep understanding that comes from surviving adversity together. Our wedding was a celebration not only of renewed romance, but of triumph over those who had tried to destroy our capacity for trust and happiness. Tyler's transformation through therapy and his new career as an advocate for elder abuse victims had restored our relationship to levels of closeness and communication that surpassed even our best times when he was younger. His work with federal agencies and victim support organizations helped other families recognize manipulation tactics and protect themselves from financial predators. Tyler's engagement to Dr. Amanda Rodriguez, a social worker who specialized in helping fraud victims recover from trauma, brought me a daughter-in-law who understood the importance of family loyalty and professional ethics. Amanda's work with elderly clients had given her deep appreciation for the wisdom and strength that come with age, making her a perfect partner for Tyler's personal growth and healing. The Sarah's House Foundation, established with funding from Vincent's business empire, provided emergency housing and legal support for elderly Americans who had lost their homes to fraud fires or other disasters. Our foundation helped dozens of families rebuild their lives while pursuing justice against those who had exploited their vulnerability. Crystal's fraud ring was completely dismantled through the federal task force that grew out of our case, preventing an estimated $50 million in future thefts and protecting thousands of potential victims from sophisticated elder abuse schemes. The investigation led to new federal legislation strengthening protections for older Americans and making it easier for family members to report suspected financial exploitation. Tyler and I established weekly dinner traditions and shared volunteer work that rebuilt our emotional connection while channeling our experience into helping other families avoid the manipulation and betrayal that had nearly destroyed our relationship. Our partnership in victim advocacy work provided healing through service to others who face similar challenges. My art therapy program for trauma victims drew on my background as a teacher and my personal experience with recovery, using creative expression to help other elderly fraud victims process their grief and rebuild their confidence. The program operated from a studio in my new house, where Vincent had created a bright, welcoming space for community healing. Vincent's property development company redirected its focus toward affordable senior housing, designed with fraud protection systems, security features, and community support networks that would prevent isolation and vulnerability among elderly residents. His business expertise, combined with our advocacy experience, created housing models that prioritize safety and dignity for aging Americans. Hayes's corruption case led to complete reform of the city planning department, with new oversight procedures and transparency requirements that prevented future manipulation of development permits and rezoning decisions. Our neighborhood became a model community for protecting historic character while accommodating appropriate growth and improvement. Tyler's public speaking engagements about manipulation tactics and warning signs of relationship fraud helped educate thousands of young adults about protecting their families from criminals who exploit romantic relationships to gain access to assets and personal information. His testimony about chemical manipulation raised awareness about involuntary drugging as a tool of domestic abuse. Crystal's other victims received full restitution through asset forfeiture proceedings, and the Federal Victim Compensation Fund, allowing many families to rebuild their financial security and restore their faith in the justice system. The network of survivors became a support community for ongoing healing and advocacy work. Vincent's adult children from his previous marriage embraced our relationship with enthusiasm, welcoming me as family and healing the emotional wounds from his divorce. Our blended family created new traditions and relationships that enriched all our lives while honoring the memory of Robert and the lessons learned from surviving adversity. My memoir, Building from Ashes, a story of betrayal, survival, and justice, became a bestseller and raised national awareness about elder fraud, while providing hope for other victims who felt isolated and powerless against sophisticated criminals. The book's success funded additional victim support programs and legislative advocacy efforts. Tyler's completion of law school and his appointment as assistant district attorney specializing in elder abuse prosecution fulfilled his commitment to using his experience with victimization to protect other vulnerable Americans. His unique understanding of manipulation tactics made him particularly effective at investigating and prosecuting complex fraud cases. Our Thanksgiving dinner table now seated 12 people, including Tyler and Amanda Vincent's children and grandchildren neighbors who'd become chosen family and law enforcement officers who continued to work on elder fraud prevention. The celebration represented the triumph of genuine community over the isolation that criminals exploit to victimize vulnerable people. Standing in my kitchen 1 year after the fire preparing coffee with Vincent, while Tyler and Amanda planned their spring wedding, I reflected on the life lessons that had emerged from nearly losing everything I valued. The fire that was meant to destroy my life had actually burned away false relationships and revealed the people who truly cared about my well-being. I had learned that real love protects and supports you through crisis, while manipulation tears you down and isolates you from sources of help and strength. The betrayal that was designed to make me feel powerless had actually revealed my capacity for courage and strategic thinking that I hadn't known I possessed at 65. Most importantly, I discovered that being underestimated by criminals can become a powerful advantage when combined with the resources and relationships that come from living with integrity over many decades. Crystal and her accomplices saw me as a vulnerable, elderly woman, never imagining that a retired art teacher could orchestrate their complete downfall with the help of federal agents and surveillance technology. The poison that was meant to control Tyler had actually revealed the strength of our underlying bond and our capacity to forgive manipulation while holding criminals accountable for their choices. Our family had emerged stronger and more connected than ever before, protected by hard-won wisdom about recognizing deception and valuing authentic relationships. The theft that was supposed to impoverish me had instead led to financial security beyond anything I had previously imagined, combined with the deep satisfaction of using those resources to protect other vulnerable Americans from similar exploitation. Vincent's love had restored my faith in partnership, while our shared advocacy work gave meaning and purpose to our remaining years together. Have you ever trusted your instincts when something felt wrong about a person or situation, even when everyone else told you to ignore those feelings? Sometimes our inner wisdom recognizes danger before our conscious minds can identify the specific threats we're facing. Share this story with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late to fight back against those who underestimate your strength and intelligence. If you found hope and inspiration in my journey from betrayal to triumph, please like this video to help other families recognize manipulation tactics and protect themselves from financial predators. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about ordinary people who refused to become victims and discovered their own power to seek justice. Thank you for joining me in this story of survival, family healing, and the victory of genuine love over calculated greed. Remember that your age and life experience are sources of wisdom and strength, not vulnerabilities for others to exploit. Trust your instincts, protect your independence, and never let anyone convince you that you're too old to fight for what's rightfully yours.